Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Double OG's podcast. So this is me, French OG, at French OG3 on X, with Christopher Zephyr at Master Zephyr 11 on X. So today's subject is what it really means to be fake, what it means to be real, right? So I understand last time we had like this conversation, Chris, right? And you were saying that there was like some power that comes with authenticity, or call it be real, you know? Can you like develop a bit more on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as guys who study how to get better in social environments, how to level up, how to become more dominant over interactions that you have. We often like to analyze and learn the rules of the game, learn the psychology of the people that we're dealing with, whether it's sales, whether it's women, whatever. And as a result, we gain a, a great understanding of the rules at play and the tactics and strategies to use. Now, this is essential and necessary, especially for people who find a lot of these complex situations to be very confusing and who have not had much success. But there is a point that you reach where you are no longer where you've learned all the rules of the engagement and you've learned what maximizes success and you've learned what kind of tactics and strategies to use. But there is a point where you start to be able to break the rules. And this is the point where this is what we refer to as authenticity. I think a good working definition of authenticity I've ruminated on this for a long time because authenticity is a very hard thing to define. It's very ethereal. Authenticity is when we have so much of a commitment to our own identity that we can actually break the usual rules of engagement at play, where we can say things that if another person said might be perceived in a very negative way and end up with less results. We can essentially behave without having to be some kind of slave to what works and live our own life and live our own authentic individual experience and still get all of the things that we want. So for all of us guys who are out there learning about all these rules and systems and don't say this to a woman, don't say that to a woman, don't give her this impression, don't come across as being this. All of us guys who've learned all of these rule sets, many of us in the intermediate stage of things. We spend half of our lives worrying about if we're saying the wrong thing, right? We get some success by applying systems, by applying rules, by learning about things. But then we almost end up becoming enslaved by worry and anxiety about whether or not we're doing things right. The only way to go from that intermediate stage to the higher level is to really understand what matters to you and what doesn't matter to you. And when you start to focus only on what matters to you, there is a higher level of energy, there's a higher level of vibes, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that when people experience, they will allow you to break those rules. Because they will know, right? They will know that that guy didn't say that thing because he was insecure. He says it because he doesn't give a fuck, right? When that guy has that nerdy little hobby, right, rather than being a symbol of low status, it could be a sign of how individual he is, a sign of eccentricity. Cool people can have their own little catchphrases. They can have their own little eccentricities, their own little desires. Okay? When one guy has a particular kind of fetish, he's a weirdo creep. When this other guy he's just a crazy guy, right? He's cool and crazy. That's what he likes. Okay? Today is about moving from that stage where you're sort of enslaved by that endless desire to not fuck up, to moving into that authentic frame of mind where simply being you and having all of your own individuality, all of your own intricacies and all of your own quirks will be the thing that carries you forwards rather than the thing that gets in your way.
Yeah. The reason why PUA worked and was so popular is I gave a framework for people to just follow blindly, right? But remember, like, how many times you hear a woman say, "It's not what you said that matters; it's how you say it." Well, they're not completely wrong when they say this, because as you rightly said, when a guy says something, depending upon the way he says it, it can be the same exact thing, but the tonality or the vibe under which he says it can really shows either he's insecure or either he just don't give a fuck. And that's why I try to basically tell people whenever they, I mean, obviously I understand a lot of people just need some basic guidelines, because really rules are just there to help you, it's a bit like training wheels, help you along the way of carrying a conversation, especially if you have social anxiety, if you have problem expressing yourself, that's helping, right? But whether it's in sales, when you have like a script whatsoever, as you get more and more experience, what happens is you run your own show because you've seen all of those things. You have all those reference points, and you can literally say whatever you want. You can control the conversation, do everything naturally. It becomes a byproduct of who you are, and you can change things, do things that are against the established rules. All right, rules are for beginners or potentially even intermediate. But once you reach the advanced stage, you realize that not giving a fuck is actually the next level, where you come to the stage where you're the lion that doesn't give a fuck about the opinion of sheeps. And just the way that you'll communicate that to other people will just translate that vibe. Whether or not they won't fall into that frame, it's a matter of them. It's not going to make you necessarily be more popular with girl altogether, but whenever you're going to be having a good vibe with a girl, it'll be a very strong vibe. Because what happens is whenever you try to appeal to the broadest, it is at the expense of the depth within that person, right? That's why it's like when you be real with someone and it catches, literally you segment yourself against all of the other people who are saying stuff that works on the short term, but that fails on the long term, in the long term. Because how many times a girl has been banged out, right, by a guy that, has displayed all the stuff that he should have displayed? Many times, right? And you could have done the same thing, but if you banged her and you've shown yourself to be real, she'll be like, whoa, this guy is actually way more legit than others. Right? But also, it's more important for you as well as an individual to have that frame of mind, have that frame of thoughts that allows you to actually feel more comfortable, be better about yourself. But think about it this way, right? It's something I was discussing with a client recently. It's game is what? Game is masquerading as you having no insecurity just from the rules and the framework and the setup and the lines and whatnot that you use, or even the reframings. But technically, what you want to do is you want to go beyond game. What is beyond game? Game is there to hide your insecurities to the point that you don't have any. And really, what having a good game is having as little as insecurity as possible so that you can actually navigate talking to man, woman in an even level. And another tip that I would say for guys that have trouble discussing with women is be less purpose driven in your interactions. And I understand it can be very difficult for guys, because what's happening is generally we have a goal target. Okay, let's make this happen. But then what's going to happen is it creates too much outcome dependence, meaning by that you're so desperate on reaching that outcome that it shows that you cannot live without it, meaning by that you are dependent upon another person to reach whatever you feel or you seek out in order to feel better about yourself. But it doesn't work like that. If you want to show value, it's about speak to everyone as if there's the same level. The nine's a nine, the nine's a six, the four's a six, the six a six. And what happens? It shows that you're not phased by who they are, because to you, you're the nine and they're the six. And you already created that delta in your behavior and just the way you interact. And you can always decide whether or not, based upon the interaction, if you lift them up at the nine or if you drop them more at the four, irrespective of their hotness. And that's what guys have a problem with, is that, oh, I'm going to talk to a 9. Then what's going to happen is I'm going to behave like she's a 9. So therefore I'm going to simp or appeal to her so that I can get brownie points and validation because of the association that I have with her. When if there's one area where you have to be indecisive, is towards the intention that you have towards her so that she feels she can work with you. The other area where you have to be decisive is where you work all the way to set up the date, to do everything that is action led in terms of the logistic of the interaction. Chris.
Yeah, you make a very, very good point there about the definition of game. And this is really something that is people are talking about this without knowing that they're talking about this. And because they don't know that they're talking about this, they kind of skirt around the issue and sometimes use the wrong language. Like, why is it that a lot of guys like to shit on pickup artists, even though we kind of all were in that phase at one point, right? We all, like me, for example, as a sort of analytical kind of guy myself, I learned a lot from Todd Valentine, right? And guy you met recently, actually, right?
Yeah.
And like a lot of these skills, like these technical frameworks of pickup artistry, they do work in the sense of getting the skills required to understand what's going on and to not make a fool out of yourself. But you understand that PUA is, as you said, PUA is a way of masking any kind of insecurities that you may have, right? It's a way of presenting yourself as a man who is effortless around women, as a man who has women in his life, as a man who can get them whenever he needs to get them. And so because you can present yourself as this person, then you can end up having success with women, right? Because women need a certain level of effectiveness from you. They need a certain level of proof of concept from you in order to invest in you sexually and emotionally. Now, this is good in terms of building up reference experiences because in the early stages, right, you as much as you can lie to yourself and say that you're not insecure, if you want to sleep with a lot of women and you haven't, you are going to be to some extent insecure. And so it is actually a very good strategy to come up with ways of masking that so it doesn't interfere with your chances of success. But there comes a point when there's a certain level of reference experiences you've had. Say I would usually say when you've slept with 10 new women, right? Some guys talk a lot about body counts, 50, 100, blah, blah, blah. I personally think if you're a guy who has, either as a result of taking them home from a club, cold approach, or dating apps, slept with 10 women who you didn't know before, who you weren't introduced to, who simply as a result of your game went from first interaction to fucking them, right? If you can do that, then essentially you have what it takes to pull women, right? You have a reasonable level of expertise. You're not some kind of beginner. There's no reason after that point to feel insecure. There's no reason to sort of mask. There's no reason to present yourself as a man who sleeps with a decent number of women because at that point you already have, right? I know we like to us 10 doesn't seem like a lot, but 10 it's easy to forget. Sleeping with 10 women who you've never been introduced to before, you just go out into the world, you just make 10 lays happen. That already puts you in the top 10% of men, right? It actually does. I mean, in terms of sexual prowess, like the vast majority of men will sleep with less than 10 women in their lives, and most of those women will only be women that they've known through their childhood or been introduced to at work or whatever, So what do we do after we've reached a point where we're no longer actually insecure, where we genuinely are a guy who is sexually desirable and who can flirt, who can who can sit in front of a woman and handle being in her presence? But what is game after that point, right? What is game? What definition does it have? Now, I personally would say that this game after that point becomes a question of efficiency and customizability of your sexual lifestyle, right? So it's about being able to know really what you want from the realm of sex and from the realm of dating. Do you want to have like one really fucking bad bitch, right? And just have her like raise your children and be loyal to her? Do you want to maybe travel the world, and so you want to have the ability and skills to just be able to go wherever and be in any city on the planet, and to just leave your hotel and go to a nightclub and just have a good chance of pulling a girl home, right? Do you want to be someone who engages in more specific sexual fantasies, maybe in the context of like sort of kink, BDSM, like master slave, dom sub? When you stop thinking in terms of the next lay, right? When you stop thinking in terms of, oh, I've got to reach a certain number because then when I've reached that number, right, then I will be a high value male, right? That number's lower than you think. That number's about 10, right? It's about 10, right? Once you've reached that point, it is a question of what kind of lifestyle do I want to have? And when you have a good, clear idea in your head about what kind of lifestyle you want to have, then game becomes about the strategy of achieving that with the most efficiency in the shortest time possible and with replicability, if that's a word, right? Like it becomes less a question of saying whatever you need to say to get the girl in front of you into bed so that you can get the next number on your lay count, right? That kind of mentality goes away, because now it becomes a case of, I want to have a certain kind of lifestyle. Will the girl in front of me help me achieve that? And the question now becomes, rather than sort of coming up with every way possible to get the girl in front of you into bed, it now almost becomes a game of like testing her and giving her every single reason to not get with you. And if she still wants to get with you after you've given her all the like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this specific thing, I want this from you, I want this from you, I want you to behave like this around me. Once finally you've put her through all these paces and you've made her jump through all of your hoops so that you know she perfectly fits well into this strategy that you have for the lifestyle that you want, then finally you allow her to get into your bed, right? So it's almost like a kind of a flip, right? It's like you've built up a state of abundance. You've learned the rules of the game. Now the question is to go one step higher, and this is when authenticity is achieved. When you are well aware of what kind of lifestyle you're building and what kind of strategy. It's like the difference between when you have no money and you're broke and you'll just do anything to get your own place, to get out of your parents' house, to put food on the table, to pay your bills, right? And then once you finally have a source of income, right, and you have a little bit of spare time, then you can start to build your own business. And it's the sexual equivalent of that. It's the dating equivalent of that. The PUA guides, right? The rule guides, right? Oh, don't say this to her if you don't want to jeopardize the lay. Don't start texting sexual over text because it might activate her slut defense. This kind of shit. It's the equivalent of a guy who's doing anything he can to get money when he's broke. But when you're not broke, you can start to think in terms of what kind of business you want to build, what kind of project you want to engage in. And it's through the engaging in these projects, this higher order of strategies, higher order of like organizing your life, the authenticity comes about.
You're talking about 10, for some guys it could be 30, some guys it would be 50, some guys it'd be 100. But what's interesting about the whole idea, even of the game, right, where you think that you need to have a certain amount of girls that for you to sleep with for you to be validated as a man is insecurity in and of itself. Because really, the girl doesn't make you as a guy. Yes, it's good to have the skills to do that, but when you switch from it being an and rather than being a mean, then you think that game is something that you have to always do in order to feel complete, when really you can use it at your own discretion. And once you use it at your own discretion, you're like, all right, I'll do something not because I seriously want the lay. I'll do something because I want to see if I'm going to vibe well with that person that is going to like me. You said something very important here, right? You're not going to be there trying to basically trigger all of the right point for her to be having that buy-in. You'll assume the buy-in until she proves you otherwise. One way of assuming a buy-in and of actually gauging how high is her level of interest is by being disagreeable. Because that's what girls do. That's girls with abundance. That's what they do. That's what they shit test. They shit test because they want to see how low will you go in order for me to give you my time. And when you do that as a guy and you're like, you just say, meh, not sure. I don't think it's going to work out between us. Or like, yeah, you can try a bit harder, Like, I'm not buying into you just because you say the right stuff to me. It's the same thing, but you just reverse it. What's important for you to understand is that once you reach that point where the lay is not what's important, but it is the terms under which you got the lay that is, then you realize that the outcome is actually really not important. Going back to the business analogy, which is it is the type of business that you want to run that matters, not so much upon whether it's going to be profitable or not. Why? Because you have enough money so that you are more interested in shaping the reality you want to live rather than adapting the reality you're in. And PUA are equivalent to you looking for an employer all the time and appealing to the employer, i.e., the bitch. But if you are past that stage where you reach that stage of being real, is you're the employer and you make the employee, i.e., the girl, fall within your framework that you want for her. If she wants to be with you, but it's going to be under your contract terms and conditions. That's really it. And what you have to understand is, yes, you may not get as many girls as if you appeal to the role, because you don't because when you appeal to the roles, you appeal to the most common denominator. But the more you try and do that, the more the risk is that you will negate the part of yourself that you want, that makes you. And it's one thing to focus on your identity as a way to gauge who's right and who's not, right? Don't overly do that as a buffer against you being potentially hurt and use that as a defense mechanism. Do that more on the positive side, where you're like, I want you to win, but you have to show it to me, right? Rather than me always having to prove myself, right? Another big thing is important is once you reach that level, whether it's 10 lay, 20 lay, 30 days, whatever, you come to a stage where you don't need to prove yourself anymore. Not only to her, but to yourself as well. Because when you were looking for all the lays, you were trying to prove yourself that you're the man, you're the big guy, you're all that shit. But once you stop doing that, you realize that a lot of the self-qualification that you were used to doing and that game hold you back from doing is just natural. And once you realize that, the vibe of you being, just a chill guy that is not seeking something from her specifically is just the natural you. It is just the authentic you. That's why when there's a girl that you don't really like, she really likes you because you don't seem needy. You're not overbearing. And she's like, oh, I can trust him because he doesn't seem like he wants something from me. And when you reach that stage, this is where you realize that every interaction is literally the same, where you will only invest into the girl that want to invest in you, irrespective of what you say that may necessarily be negative to her.
Yeah, it's when you are looking to prove yourself and you're looking to prove that you have what it's take. Look, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with a beginner objectively measuring his success by the number of girls to some extent, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you haven't slept with any women, if you haven't gone on any dates, I feel like proof of concept is necessary. It's needed. I feel like there's a lot of guys who walk around saying that, oh, you should just feel like the man, right? You should just feel like you should just sort of gaslight yourself into believing that you're the ultimate player, right? Regardless of what your level of success is. I personally think, like, I mean, you're not really going to be able to convince yourself how to act like a guy of abundance unless you have reached a certain point of abundance. You can use game to sort of mask certain insecurities and not make certain mistakes that you would have done otherwise. But ultimately, you do actually, like, look, to some extent in life, it is about your bank balance. To some extent in life, it is about the amount of women you can pull and how hard you can hit your enemy in the face, right? To some extent, it is about these things. If you don't have any success in these fields, then it kind of has to be about these things. Because, if you don't have some kind of objective standard of your own success, then you're just not going to put any effort into it. Most of the guys on the planet, to be honest, when it comes to most men could probably do better in life if they actually did start to measure themselves in terms of money and sex, because most of them haven't really got much of either of those, and they don't really care about either of those, and so they're not actually bothering to try and grow so that they can get these things, and they're just offering whatever easy options society's offering them, right? I feel like, to some extent, like, once there is a certain level that you reach where you can acquire these things, and then you can search for authenticity, and then it is about being free to say whatever you want and to do whatever you want and to be whoever you want without the person sat in front of you determining what you can and cannot say. But for most beginners, I do genuinely feel like the rules are different depending on what stage you're at. Like, for most beginners, there does need to be an objective measure of success. It's about reference experiences. It's about, and this is why I feel like the process of game should not necessarily be about, beyond maybe 10 girls. It shouldn't really be about the number of girls, but it should be about pursuing experiences which provide you of objective proof of how good you are at a certain thing, right? Like, so if you sleep with one girl, that might have just been, I mean, it wasn't an accident, but you might have kind of got lucky. You might have found a girl who liked the way you look specifically. You might have, she might have just been looking to fuck at that time. If you pull one girl, yeah, that is on you. You should be proud of yourself. Yeah, great, you fucked. But you might have just got kind of a bit lucky with the girl. You might still be unattractive to most of the female population, right? However, if you slept with 5 different girls, it's a lot less likely that you just got fortunate. It's a lot more likely that you are in fact an attractive man, and that there's reason to assume, right, that in the future you'll be able to replicate that pretty much whenever you want, right? If you slept with 10, I mean, it's basically a given. If you've done that 10 times, right, it is a given at that point. But we want better than average results, right? We want more than average, and so then it becomes like, where do you go from there? Do you want to just endlessly keep sleeping with one woman at a time, right? Endlessly trying to prove yourself when you've already proven yourself? Like, there's no reason to do that. Like, you've already proven to yourself. So it becomes a question of, rather than being like, okay, I can sleep with a woman. I know that a woman actually wants me. It becomes a question of like, what are you able to get women to do, right? Are you able to get them? Are you able to say have threesomes regularly? Are you able to say, are you able to get women to fall madly in love with you? Are you able to, you'll when you start looking for reference experiences that are proof of concept, right? The proof that you know what you're doing, and then you keep setting new goals and new goals that are harder and harder and rarer experiences that require a greater level of sophistication to achieve, that becomes a lot more meaningful. And once you've gotten beyond just the sleeping with a few girls, the process of doing that is inevitable. You're going to inevitably lock and unlock and have to get to the bottom of what it is you're actually really fucking looking for. The specific lifestyle that when you're no longer desperate, when you're no longer the thirsty man in the desert looking for any drink that comes along, right? When you're no longer that man, what kind of projects and goals does your mind come up with to test you further beyond that? That is where you find authenticity. That's where you find who you are, the process of going after those extra levels of complexity.
You were saying about this thing where, like at some point you need to have a level of money or level of, let's say, sexual experience for you to objectify your value, right? Guys always look at tangible evidence, right? We're empirical humans, right? We're not ethereal, wishful thinking women, right? It's hard at first to basically convince your subconscious that you're not the person who you think you are that's held you back all these years from getting the outcomes you want. But you have to start with that to some extent, right? With the help of a framework so that you feel comfortable enough, right? And what happens is you'll get like negative feedback and everything, and then you'll have to revert back to those reframes that, look, it's not personal, it's just what it is, right? In terms of, I'll use a poker analogy. I mentioned before about the difference between objective reality and subjective reality. Think of objective reality as the cards you hold in your hand on a poker table, right? And subjective reality is a card you represent to the table that basically don't see your objective reality. People cannot see your bank balance. People cannot see the actual SMV in its whole full self. Because SMV is more than just looks. So what you find yourself in is, what am I going to represent? And that is a subjective reality that you use with your communication, with what you show yourself to be, from style, from behavior, etc., etc. And that's how people need to detach themselves from their own objective intrinsic value and their subjective real value. Because at the end of the day, women are often surface level. So once you understand that, you realize that you can actually win without actually showing your hands in poker table. It's about showing what you represent. However, as you said, Chris, there are times where, to some extent, you need to have some money. To some extent, you need to have objectively driven landmarks that show that you have real value. And that's the thing, you cannot win a tournament in poker if you never, without going to showdown. At some point, in some cases, you will have, and you'll have to basically show the receipts. So this is not to say that it's all about subjective reality, but what guys miss is that they look at objective reality as such, as the only true interpretation of facts. But you can have all the objective reality that you want if you basically misplay on the poker table the cards that you have, whether it is a strong hand or whether it is a weak hand. You're going to miss out on the value of other people within inside that table. And once you understand that, you realize that you can be really good by understanding all of the variables at play, be within the moment. And authenticity is also being within the moment, appreciating, your senses, what your gut tells you, and making decisions based on that. And it's realigning yourself with what you truly feel within you about a situation at play to make the right decisions. And you'll find that a lot of good poker players, it's not only about the math they run on, about, oh, should I make that call, or should I fold, or should I make that raise, or should I check? A lot of time it's inbuilt intuition that came from thousands and thousands of hands they play. And this is what it is. You can only reach authenticity from the aggregation of reference points that you'll learn, maybe from some of the time from the rules that you decided, or some of the time just from you being open and expressing who you are, and see how it goes. But at the end of the day, it's also about understanding that there's so much that you can control, and the interpretation of what you say, of what you do, of what you represent can vary from the difference of players, the different players. So therefore, you'll realize over time that you are not as responsible of the outcomes that you get. And once you get to that point, you are more comfortable in being authentic yourself.
Yeah, there's different types of slavery. Now there's people who live a certain life, and this is most people. There's people who live a certain life because they don't have any other choice. They're not strong enough, they're not brave enough, they're not smart enough, they're not resourceful enough, they don't have enough agency to live any other life other than that life. The only way to really get out of it is to become a different kind of slave for a time, right? It's if you're broke, if you're working class, or you're straight up poor, you need to some degree become a slave to the money for a certain amount of time before you can free yourself from the slavery of being poor, right? So you spend all your time thinking about money, spend all your time learning about money, how to be more efficient with your time, how to increase the speed at which you can make it, how to go from step A to step B to step C quicker and quicker, right? And mindset, techniques, building businesses, different types of businesses, how to invest the money that you're making. You spend all your time learning about this stuff, right? And learning about the rules of the game. And you are a kind of slave, right? You are working you're spending all your time, you're spending a lot of effort learning about all these things. But it's necessary. It's necessary because you're becoming a slave to money voluntarily, knowing that once you've kind of figured out all the rules and fixed it, like, to the point where everything becomes easy for you, you will be in this phase where you have enough money so that you no longer have to be a slave to anything. You'll be able to create your own systems of income so that you can live the kind of life that you want, and to have choice, have freedom to move around, to live in a certain kind of property, to go to certain places. You're no longer a victim of circumstance. You have created a life where you have freedom. And if you want to, with that freedom and time, if you want to go on and make even more money, you can do that. Or you can sort of go and do your hobbies or do whatever, right? This is the point. But in order to reach that point, you kind of have to become a slave, right? So when you first start out and you've got nothing, you're a slave no matter what you do, right? Like there are a lot of guys who like to criticize pickup artists, and who like to say, like, oh, well, it's so desperate, like learning techniques to get women, studying guides on how to get women, like, oh, it's so desperate and everything. But I mean, sure, that's great. It's great to say that and everything. It's great to flex how not desperate you are if you're already a guy who has lots of results and can live the kind of lifestyle that he wants, right? But if you're just a guy who's married to an average ugly bitch who talks to him like shit, right, and you're sitting there talking about how pickup artists are all desperate, like, bro, maybe it's beneficial for you to become a little bit more desperate until maybe you can fucking be the kind of man who can actually build build something that's a little bit better, like. So, when you're at the bottom, you don't have a choice. You got a choice of being a slave to circumstance, or a slave of your own making, with the idea that one day in the future you'll actually, as a result of that enslavement, as a result of that hard work, as a result of the sort of the hill you've given yourself to climb, you know that one day you'll be in a position of freedom and abundance, right? And that freedom and abundance is when you have that authenticity. So it is worth clarifying and repeating on this point that we reach authenticity by learning how to get objective results. And we learn how to get objective results by, ironically enough, the best way to learn how to get objective results is to find creative ways of pretending like we already have them, right? Of essentially bluffing our way until we have objective results. Then when we do have objective results, then we achieve higher levels of results by caring less about objective results and caring more simply about, you are no longer then a slave to numbers. You are then someone who's free to engage to engage with the world in a more playful manner, where you can sit there with a girl and have genuinely more enjoyment from testing and seeing what the hell you can get her to do, and just seeing what kind of funny things you can say to her without any, completely free from how she reacts. And you'll get more enjoyment from that than you would have done a few years ago, than you would have done from fucking her, right? Like, and the interesting thing is, when it comes to pretty much everything, but especially with women, is that when you start to engage in this kind of game where you already know you've got everything that you want, you already know you can fuck all the girls you want, you already know you can make enough as the amount of money that you have time to make, right? Like you already know you can get these things, and you enter into this wonderful environment of just taking the piss out of everything and just playing around and just doing whatever occurs to you, and viewing the person in front of you, the customer in front of you, the woman in front of you, as just a fun thing, just to mess with and just enjoy. When you engage in that kind of higher level of game, which is only really possible once you've proven to yourself, once you've bluffed your way to those objective results, it's the only real way to reach this point. Once you actually do, you tend to get the impression that, oh, my results will go down massively, right? My results will go down massively. All my customers will run away. All my girls will run away, right? And some of them might, but what you'll find out is an enormous number of them won't. An enormous amount of people will actually be really genuinely attracted to the kind of person you are when you're just playing around and doing whatever. There'll be a certain energy that you'll give off. And you'll find that the people who stick around and the people who actually still get you and are willing to engage with you in your authentic self, just at play, living how you want, you'll find that those people will go to greater lengths for you than they ever would have done before. Like whether it's like, I suppose a brilliant example of this is when Tate burst onto the scene in terms of business, right? Like how many business schools that you would, how many fucking schools to learn about business can you go to where they'll sit there and tell you, yeah, the best way to get more customers who think you're amazing and will buy everything from you is to just insult them all and call them all gay, fags, and pussies, right? How many business schools will tell you that? Very few. And yet, Tate was stood there, right? He was sat there in his fucking Versace robe, right, with his cigar, saying, "I'm amazing. I'm the best. I'm 6'4". I'm 4-time world champion kickboxer. You're a pussy. You're a loser. You're nobody," right? And he ended up making millions from it, right? Because everyone was so impressed by how little of a fuck that he gave, right? This guy was, his strategy was, there are going to be some guys who are high enough testosterone to understand what the fuck I'm getting at, And you know what? I'm at the point now where those are the only people I want to interact with. So every fucking video, I'm gonna make it like a kind of test. I'm gonna make a big fucking video where I just insult everyone who wouldn't really get the message, right? And the people that will get the message, they'll come to me, and because I'm so real with my message, they'll fucking worship me, right? And it fucking worked. It worked. He pissed off a lot of people, but those people wouldn't have got it anyway, right? The people who listened to what he was saying, right? When he said, you're a bitch, you're a pussy, and all this, right? They rather than listening to necessarily like the insult, instead they were like, damn, I really need to become more of a man. I really need to work harder. I really need to get better. That's what he's saying. He's being tough with me, right? And that's the whole point. And it works with everything. It works with everything. Like when I demand certain things from a girl, right? When I demand a certain level of submission, when I demand a certain level of understanding of BDSM dynamics, when I demand that she dresses a certain way when she comes on a date, right? Like I really genuinely don't want to meet up with a girl who is offended by this shit. I genuinely don't want to. I am sick. Like if a girl is like, oh yeah, I don't really wanna live that kind of lifestyle. Like, oh no, like I'll cover up my tits when we're on a date or whatever. Like shut the fuck off then. What kind of what do you think I'm doing? What do you think? You think I have fucking spare time in my life to bother with you if you don't want to do exactly what I want from you? Well, goodbye. Like this is the point. But you know what? You might think that attitude would end up with me running into all sorts of girls who say no, and I end up getting rejected by every girl that I meet. At this point, like I pretty much never run into a girl at this point that even gets offended because it's like I just whenever I'm talking, whenever I'm speaking, in every message, in everything that I say, in everything that comes across, it's fucking clear who I am, right? And it's clear. I'm as clear as day from the very fucking beginning of the interaction what I want. And so when it comes time for me to make those little demands, they already know I'm gonna be making demands like that. They know, and so this is the point. Like you need to reach a point where you're so used to demanding a certain way out of life. You're so used to being real and being yourself that you're not even like reducing your results anymore at that point. You're not even like losing any extra opportunities because like then it like anything other than what you want is not even an opportunity. Am I making sense here, French?
Makes total
Am I
sense. And
making
someone
sense?
has
Yeah.
someone has read one of my latest Bumble share, I guess.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you?
There's
Did you?
yeah. Sometimes I mean like man, we go so fucking complex on shit. Sometimes it's hard to know if we're using the right language. Sometimes I feel like because I know what I'm talking about, but I want to make sure that whoever's listening to this
Oh, of course,
is not just
man. Of
listening to
course,
me
of
thinking,
course.
what the fuck, you know?
You were saying about testing girls, right? Not even testing girls, but just be like, just toy with them. Girls be toying with toying with you, even though when they're not really that interested, right? Where they be like, yeah, just dance around with me, just see how long you can entertain me for, even though they're not going to do anything with you, right? But you can do the same thing as a guy. You can. Like, I saw this woman, right, like on Bumble, and I was like, yeah, I mean, lawyer, 38. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, and I thought, let's see if she can be content worthy. And the conversation went, and I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna basically place this, and I'm gonna direct the conversation so that she makes it like it's her that is asking me this, even though it's me that wanted her to ask me this, right? So that it doesn't look like I am like literally like fucking bombing bullshit on her. And she's like, oh yeah, I love restaurant, I love being taken out, blah blah blah. And I said, oh, living the life of Riley, and then put below the Riley Raid picture with like a face full of cum looking up toward my message with 5 black guys behind. And she's like, oh, puke. Oh, and I said, hey, look, no gag reflex takes practice. Obviously, that got me banned. Well, not banned, but that got me unmatched. The reality is, I didn't even fucking care. But the thing is, when you talk with girls that you don't really fucking care about, you can show that yourself to be saying whatever the fuck you want. Obviously, I went too high on the disrespect, but this is what you realize. This is what you have when you have true abundance. You really don't give a fuck. And going back onto what you're saying about the you have to build up in order to reach to that stage of abundance. When people or of authenticity, when people say, like your parents, your friends, everything, just be yourself, right? But if you build yourself without no reference points, you're just going to be coming with your full version of yourself, who's full of insecurities, full of nothing. It's like asking you to basically shove all in with a pair of with a 2 and 7 on the poker table, or it's about saying, hey, look, why don't you start a business when you have no experience in nothing? It's like, what is your baseline? What is your base, right? You have to eat shit at first before you can allow yourself to be yourself, because you already proved yourself that you can do this, and you prove others that you can do it. That's why feedback is always important, so that people can see. I'm talking feedback, receipts, whatever, so people can see that you know what the fuck you're talking about from a business standpoint. It's really, and something that you say is very important. Anything that doesn't fit you is not an opportunity. You come to a stage that anything that doesn't benefit you is a net loss from a time, money, energy perspective. And once you reach that, you realize, well, actually, I have all the power I have in the world. And it only can come from a position of having already got those objectifiable results. And something that I want to also emphasize on, which is what you said, which is very important, and which is quite ironic in itself, is for you to reach that level, you'll have to find those creative ways that are not you, in order for you to realize that it's better being you, but you have the confidence that you can always go back to not being you, getting those results, but you prefer not to, and still getting the result being you.
Yeah, yeah.
It is, in other words, it's fake it till you make it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds so wild, but like it's so fucking true. It's so true. Right. Here's the thing, like authenticity comes from saying the things that you've always wanted to say, but never been able to get away with before now. Right? Like if you can reach a point to where you can get away with saying stuff other guys couldn't, right? Like if when you first start doing something, you want to say things. You want to say various things, but you dare not say those things because they might ruin your chances, right? Authenticity comes from being able to say those things like whenever you want, regardless of the consequences. You know, like regardless. Like I like girls with huge tits, right? I like those rare girls, when it like they're so big, like it affects their quality of life. Like I love that shit. I wanted to suffer, like I wanted to have those red straps, red marks on her shoulders. I love that shit, right? And I remember like I would, these are the kind of girls I like to get with, right? And when I first started going out and gaming and like dating girls and stuff, I'd be there I'd be out on a date with a girl, right? And she might have some huge tits, and I just want to fucking look at them and say to her, I'm like, damn, your fucking tits look so fucking great. Like, I might like, but back in the day, it would have been like, oh no, that's not good game. What if she's offended by that? You know? But like it's funny. Like I was actually like just before I got on the podcast and that right today, right? I was messaging a potential new girl, right? Potential new girl, great big tits. Every time I message her, I'm like, fucking, hey, super tits, how's things been going? When she meets me on a date, I say to her like, fucking, bring them tits with you, like wear something low cut. I want to have a view, okay? Do that. Like here's the thing. If now, as it turns out, she actually likes it, right? And girls do actually like that. Girls like to be objectified. They like to be objectified by a guy who isn't afraid to objectify them. It's only creepy if you're like, hey, super tits. No, it's just like, if you're just like, hey, super tits, how's it going, right? when you're like that, when it's that kind of objectification, they're like, oh yeah, right? They like it, okay? But here's the thing, right? Like, if she'd have been offended by it, it's still better than if I didn't say it. That's the point, because
And
it's
all
more.
and sorry, I just want to say something on this because it's very interesting. I think it's a good contrast. Well, basically, still holding true for both of us
Hmm,
is if you didn't say it because you wanted it, right?
hmm,
That would have been not congruent with yourself, right? Whereas with me,
yeah,
and I remember we exchanged that, right? Whereas with me, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say not because I'm afraid of offending her, but because I want her to surprise me. Because I'd rather basically have her dress up the way she wants it
hmm.
as a way for me to see how she views me and as a way for me to be able to qualify or
I
disqualify.
get you, I get
And
you.
then, but it's not to say mine is right or yours is wrong. It's to say that
No, yeah,
because I'm coming
exactly.
from that perspective and you come from that perspective, doesn't mean by that, guys, just know what you want and what you like and what it implies and what resonates most with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is the beautiful thing about authenticity, because there is no real, like, well, there is a right answer and there is a wrong answer, right? The wrong answer is wanting to do things a certain way and not doing it. That's the wrong answer, right? And the right answer is wanting to do things a certain way and doing it, right? Now, when it comes to authenticity, neither me or French can really sit there and look into the heart and the mind of you, right, at home, sitting there listening to this, and say exactly what is going to be like the priority for you, right? We don't know. We don't know. In fact, I started doing this a lot more. I'll give another example, right? I started doing this kind of stuff a lot more when I met a friend of mine. I won't say his name, but this friend of mine, I have mentioned him a few times actually. Like, he loves women's feet, right? Like, that's he does. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like a nice, pretty set of toes, but it's not the highest thing for me. It's not the
And don't
most
forget
important.
the arch.
Well, French is a man of culture. He's yeah, he is. But this mate of mine, this mate of mine, it's the main thing for him. He fucking loves women's feet, right? The first few nights I started going out clubbing with him, like, he would walk up to women, right? Like, literally, like, hot girls, and he'd start talk. He'd literally, like, walk up and start talking about, like, yeah, I love them fucking shoes you're wearing, showing off them toes, like, them painted white and that girl, like, I love that shit, and like, he'd walk up and they'd be looking at him like, uh, okay, okay, like it's funny, like, they'd be sitting there like, the look on these girls' faces as they realize, like, is this guy really just walking up and talking about how sexy my feet look, like. But he would be so unashamed and unabashed about it, right? That he can get away with it. It's the same way, like when I talk to a girl about her tits. Like, it's who I am and it's how I want to talk, and I don't apologize for it.
And you know what you don't do? You never explain, you never rationalize.
Yeah,
Because it's just the way it is.
yeah, exactly. And occasionally you might get. The thing is like, if you're truly genuinely, like, used to doing it, you don't really get tested, because girls
You
can
can
just see
feel.
that this.
You can
Yeah,
feel,
they
yeah.
can feel this is just who I am, like. But this is just who he is, like. But when you first start trying to be a bit more authentic like this, and you start taking more risks in the things that you say, you will get tested a little bit. You will get tested a little
And
bit,
what
because
do
a
you
girl.
do? You double down.
You double down, you triple down, you fucking infinite to the power of fucking n exponential fucking double down, right? You, like, you're fucking doubling down to fucking, ridiculous numbers. Okay, you and sometimes when you first start trying to live your own way, you might actually run into a situation where things go wrong. You might. You might. I'm pretty sure my mate has at some point in the past, not anymore because it's who he is now, but I'm pretty sure at some point in the past he's had some girl like, oh my god, why are you talking about my feet? Oh my god. But here's the thing. Like, those situations are beautiful because they're a brilliant way of like reality colliding with what you want, and then you're like, you know what? Like, if reality, like if the current reality of this situation is not matching up to what I want, then clearly this situation is shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll go and find a different situation. I'll go and create a different situation. I'll go and engineer a different situation. You know, like most people they allow the current reality of what they see in front of them to determine what they're allowed to have.
And that's the
You know,
concept
like
of outframing.
of what, Simon?
Outframing.
Out framing. No, L
Mm,
framing.
no, outframing. Meaning by that, she gives you a frame, right, of like what's
Yeah.
acceptable and what's not acceptable, and then basically, because your frame is so strong, you basically outframe her, so that she falls
Oh yeah,
within
yeah,
it.
yeah. So, sorry, the mic was getting a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like, just it's. I mean, that's the definition of frame, really, isn't it? Like, you have a certain reality that you impose as a result of what you decide is normal and what you decide is acceptable. And she has a frame of reality of what she defines as acceptable and normal. And you have a kind of clash of wills. And she has, if you can demonstrate to her, like, that you are strong enough to be worthy of respect, then, and she has that, and she has that respect for you. You know, she accepts, like, damn, this guy is a cool guy. This guy is he is very much in his own element. He's very much who he is. He's authentic and true to who he is. How could I possibly stand in the way of that? Right? That when she thinks that and she backs down, and then your frame becomes the frame that both of you are involved in, that's when you win. That's when you win.
And she can. Thing is, it's like she needs to trust you, and trust, especially for women, happens after a few back and forth confrontation, etc. If you're afraid of confrontation, that means you're afraid of who you are and how you assert yourself. So you need to be
Yes.
able yourself to be able to assert yourself, but not in a forceful way, in the sense of I'm the prize, I'm the prize. No, you assert yourself by just diffusing the situation, by showing that you're not fazed by it, and then literally saying, "Hey, look, this is how it's going, and you follow me
Yeah.
or you fuck off."
Yeah, like a lot of guys think that that winning the battle is sort of like, I say this is how things are, and she says this is how things are, right? And then I'm like, oh well, actually, if you look at logically, actually you'll find, if you study and analyze X Y Z, actually this is how things are. Like, she doesn't fucking understand that, man. She's a woman, right? You just say, listen, no, look, I've said that this is how things are, and you can accept this, or there's the highway, right?
But you don't. But the thing is, you never say it like that.
Yeah, you never
Like,
say it expressly, but you give off that impression. That's the subtext
like,
of
I'll
the
give you
thing that
another
you.
example. Like, like some hot bitch, right? That like that is on the app. Be like, like I set up a narrative, a frame that is quite romantic. Like I put the French romantic hat, and she was like, "Oh, that's so cheesy." Blah 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 blah. And I was all right. You want the Jeffrey Dahmer service? Here we go. And she, oh my god, one extreme to the next. It's like I'm a man of many talents. What can I say? It's like I'm not, like I'm not there to basically go and, trying to always be and appeal to whatever she says. Oh, I'm cheesy. Sorry, it was not me and everything. No, okay, I'll just make a fun of what the fuck you're saying and just be like, all right, you just want to be choked and fucking, eaten out in all different ways, Jeffrey Dahmer style. Oh no, no, no. That's the thing. It's like you come from a position of I give you a narrative. You want to criticize it? All right, fine. I give you another narrative. Oh, you don't like it still? Okay, fine. And it's like if you're not willing to basically buy onto one or two things that I'm giving you, it's like you don't want to contribute to the conversation, or you just want to be confrontational for the sake of being confrontational, without at least giving me something to work on. I'm just like, you can't force someone to dance if they don't want to dance with you, whatever the reason is. And you need to be able to establish good faith or bad faith with someone from the very onset and from the very get go. Because even if you were to game her, right, by just being persistence, etc., etc. What you do as well is you build a reward mechanism for her not abiding to you and you falling into her world. And when you understand that, you realize that it's not about you establishing that trust from establishing your frame, etc., etc. It is you working for her approval. And that's something that you need to be able to differentiate as a guy.
Yeah, it's we always end up talking about evolutionary theory, and I like that because I'm a nerd and I love the animal kingdom and I love the natural world. So let's. I'm gonna have to finish soon, so I'm gonna leave it on a note of
All right.
talking about the animal kingdom like I normally do. There are a lot of animals that have very, very unnecessary physical features, right? Very, very large horns, for example, or maybe like a peacock with its ridiculous crest, its ridiculous plumage, right? These evolutionary adaptations are they are attractive to the females, right? And a lot of people don't who have a rudimentary knowledge of evolutionary theory, they don't understand why these things are, because having ridiculously oversized horns or having ridiculous plumage, how is that going to help you hunt? In fact, if anything, it's going to actually reduce your chances to hunt, right? A peacock with its massive plumage, it's just slowing it down. So you might think, like, why is it that a female bird, a female peacock, will be attracted to that? The reason why is because if a peacock has gigantic plumage, it's unnecessary plumage, what he's demonstrating is that he can afford to waste. He is so evolutionarily fit, he is so effective a hunter that he can have this ridiculous thing, slowing him down, that he can still survive. Right? Females are attracted to waste in that sense. Like, if they're attracted to a male who can demonstrate that who can demonstrate that principle. So when a man is very, very willing to let something go, right? When he's willing to demand so much more from a woman than is really realistically necessary, when he's willing to make a woman jump through a million different hoops to get into bed with him, when he's willing to test her, when he's willing to be disagreeable in all these different ways, what it's doing is it's telling her primal senses the same thing that a female peacock sees when she looks at a male peacock's plumage, right? She thinks, like, damn, this guy has all that, and yet he's still alive and kicking. He's still surviving. He's still reproducing, right? This person must be really, really high value. This is someone who's really necessary, right? It's like, and we can also, there's an evolutionary element to marketing as well. Like, why is it that a Ferrari or a Lamborghini is impressive, right? And you can say it's because it's a lot of money, but that's not really
Well, it's
true.
partly true. It's partly it's not the full
Well,
picture.
it is true, but for a nuanced reason that I'll explain right now. A lorry is worth more than a Lamborghini in terms of money. A lot of lorries, like when a lorry goes past, like a lorry is worth more than a Lamborghini in terms of just money. But we don't have the same attitude about a lorry as we have about a Lamborghini. I'm pretty sure a lot of buses are more than a Lamborghini anyway. I'm pretty sure one of those big coaches, definitely more than the $250,000 that you need for a Lamborghini Aventador. But the thing is that with a lorry or a bus, that extra amount of money it has a purpose. It's spent on utility. It's a utility item, right? Whereas with a Lamborghini, you're spending all that money essentially on nothing. You are demonstrating that you have money to waste, right? Like, yes, it is a bit more beautiful. Yes, it is a bit faster, but it is still just a car at the end of the day. It's not carrying 10 extra people. It can't transport 20 fucking tons of shit, right? It is just a car. It's achieving the same thing. But the fact that you have all of that money to waste makes it a status symbol. right? Same with a Rolex, right? Like this, the clock on my phone, right, is far more accurate than the clock on any Rolex. Far more. Far more. It's fucking digital, right?
What do you see? Yeah.
A Rolex, right, shows that you have money to waste, right? So all of these examples add up to something. When you show that you can afford to waste, when you show that you can afford to actually like just throw things away, that it sort of hacks people's brains, and it tells you, far from telling them that like you're an idiot or that you're just wasteful or something, it tells them actually that if you can afford to waste, if you can afford to risk offending a girl, if you can afford to spend £15,000 on a watch, if you can afford to have fucking giant fucking plumage that doesn't even help you hunt, and you do a little dance in front of the girl with the giant fucking plumage, right? It shows them that you can afford to waste. You can afford to be inefficient and still achieve results. And
And
that
that's
is powerful.
and that's what Tate's done by telling everybody they're fucking, Sims, beta, whatever. Either basically invited people that recognize themselves as him, and by making that polarization within the audience, got him very strong followers and very strong haters. Same thing with girls. What do? Girls look to disqualify rather than qualify. Guys look to qualify rather than disqualify. Why? Because girls have abundance and guys don't have abundance. Which makes me laugh when I hear POA say, work with what they give you all the time. Well, no, because and tell me they have abundance at the same time. You have only abundance from the moment that you choose to disqualify a woman based upon things that doesn't suit you, doesn't fit you. Of course, you'll have to come to the stage of you have to work every time with girls in order for you to kind of like build that the idea that you can get all those girls. But eventually, in fine, that is going to be having diminishing returns as to who you are as a person. And at the end of the day, you have only a certain amount of time. If there's something where I think is the exceptions in terms of time to waste, in terms of waste, is time, because you cannot buy it back. And in a way, a lot of what game is you have to compensate for the time that you have. No, you have to compensate with the money that you don't have, with the time that you have, in order for you to be able to show that you can waste time in order to get her invested. Whereas some other tools that you could use as evidence of your status, because technically what is a Lamborghini is most of it is brand margin, most of it, going back to it. What it shows is whenever you can show to a girl that you can waste her, it tells her that you have way more girls without telling her you have way more girls. Everything is indirect. Everything is, and it's already ingrained in their mind, ingrained in their system. If you show yourself to actually be who you are by showing the disqualification potential to her, it shows you've got value, and it shows that it's not so much about who you are that matters. It's about what you subcommunicate. And I think that the point you made was actually very, very good. That wastefulness, the fact that you can waste things, shows that you have way too much things going for yourself, that you don't need that many new things to help you. And I'll just finish this before we put a wrap to it, because I understand you have to go. I think I lost my train of thought. You know what? Any last word? Maybe I'll remember. I'll remember in the next.
I guarantee you, the moment we finish filming, like you'll think of it. But
Exactly, all the fucking time.
if I've got advice to give, right? Look, we've gone very, very complicated and very intricate and very subtle, and we've said some counterintuitive things that require a little bit of thinking about today, right? Once you get these things, it will be the difference between one level and the next. It really will. But I'll say this: like, if you can reach a point where you're about to go to bed, and this has happened to me on a bunch of occasions, right? You're about to go to bed, you're fucking tired, right? And a girl's messaged you. Maybe she's drunk, maybe she's just horny, right? She video calls you, tits hanging out, oh, come round to mine, yeah, come and fuck me, right? And you go, you know what, love, I'm fucking knackered. And you just put the phone down and you go to sleep. And you don't feel the slightest bit guilty about it. Because you know Even if she's so offended you never see her again, there's like 3 or 4 other girls who will do that with you, like when you need it, right? If you've reached that point of just where you can just afford to waste opportunities, right? If like if you're then you're doing all right. You're doing all right.
By the
Like
way, I found. Sorry.
if you're still in that phase where every single opportunity has to be grabbed at any moment, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That might be what you need right now. Like you get that shit done, right? But like it just like you don't feel rich until you can afford to spend a few £1,000 on a bottle of champagne and not worry about it. Like it's not until you buy something wasteful and frivolous until you feel rich.
Or
It's
even.
not it's not
Or,
until you tell a bitch that nah, I can't be asked coming round. I'm watching a dinosaur documentary. Fucking Carnotaurus is coming on in a second. That's more interesting than you. Okay, it's not until you can say shit like that and be happy and think it's funny and not view it as something to regret that you
no,
can
no, no,
truly.
no, 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 it's quite funny. Or even better, it's not so much about the thing you buy, but the thing you say no to, right? You say no to the girl basically because you're too tired and you want to go to sleep, or you want to watch that dinosaur documentary. But it could
Yeah,
be same thing with money. It's a bit like someone offer you $1 million contract, a $5 million contract, a 50 million. And I think like that's something that Tate was talking, a $15 million contract. But if it goes against your value and everything because you got so much money, you don't give a fuck, and you like fuck
yeah,
that shit. No, that's it.
yeah,
But
exactly.
the thing that I wanted to say is this, right? Is think about it from your perspective of it's also about finding what truly resonate with you outside of girl stuff, right? Because the problem with a lot of guys, what they have is they're looking at girls as a way to fill that void in them because they cannot connect with their true deep self. And what happens is that they use a girl as a way because of that female energy is warm, is actually connect them, make them feel whole present, right? And that's how they become needy. That's how they become overbearing. That's how a lot of the time that they spent is spent on appealing to a girl. But when you find something that really resonate with you, not only will your time be prioritized into it, attending to it, but the energy that you'll give to the girl will also be more authentic because not only will you be aloof, here and there, but she will feel that she doesn't have that you're not seeking her out of that void that you have because you're full, you're plentiful. Going back to the plumage that you were saying, like like of the what was the word?
Yeah,
Plumage.
the peacock plumage. Yeah,
The peacock plumage, because you have that peacock plumage. Plumage is not only about the money that you have, it's not only about the cars you drive, it's about not all the stuff you have, but it's also about how comfortable and confident you are within your deep self because you are doing things that matters to you, right? I was talking with a client, and he's in the process of potentially divorcing, right? They're separated with his wife, and it's been a few months whatsoever. And he went doing some voluntary work after a natural disaster in his area. And he asked him a bit about how he felt, how it was good, everything, right? And he said, I really enjoyed the shit out of it. And I said, during that time, did you think about your wife? He said, no, I really felt whole. And said, you see, do more of the stuff that makes you feel like that. And then you won't wonder whether or not you have to send her a message as to whether or not she wants to send the divorce paper because you have not heard from her for a certain amount of time. And then you realize that whenever afterwards you're going to interact with her, it will be coming from a place of contentment rather than lack or scarcity. And it's not to do always about the number of girls you have, but it is in the activity that you do. And it goes the same way whenever you talk with a hot girl. Like, I'll give you a funny experience and we can close it on that. I remember I was chatting like with this girl, like fucking like a 9 out of 10 whatsoever, right? And I was thinking about her and everything. And I was like, shit. And I know that when this shit happens, I'll do fucking stupid text game. So I had my trading account, right? So I basically decided to open a prop trading account just to increase the leverage I could get within my main account. And instead of using proper bankroll management, I decided to put to over leverage myself and go on the 1 minute chart, because looking at the candles and how it goes, right, and then looking at the PNL. I tell you something. When she was responding to me, I couldn't give a fuck. I was my phone. My focus was on, will it go green? Will it go green? Will I pass the challenge? I tell you, I couldn't give a fuck at all about this shit. And because I was so into that shit. And when you find that stuff, really, you realize that you don't necessarily need 5 girls on the rotation. You just need to connect with your deep self. Sometimes meditation, sometimes it's an activity, sometimes it is a hobby, but find it is. And then you realize that whenever you come and talk to a girl, she'll feel that she's there to compliment you, not you filling your cup and filling yours at the same time.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
All right, guys. On this, we're going to close this podcast. Thank you again, Chris, for all those insights. I think it was a really good for the development and making people understand what it means to be real, making people understand that what matters in the end is not about the girls, not about your achievements. It's about whether or not you feel content and who you establish yourself as a guy. And then you'll really understand that game is just a tool, not an end. Because at the end of the day, what matters is how satisfied are you with yourself.
Yeah. The end is us doing whatever we want with whoever we want, anytime we want, whenever it occurs to us. And everything else is just a tool, a weapon in your arsenal to become that person.
That's it. Anyway, guys, on to the next one. And it is a wrap.